Okay, so picture this. A village so terrified that every single night, families lock themselves into one single room. They bolt the doors, latch the windows, all to protect their daughters from a threat that somehow gets through solid walls. It sounds impossible, right? Well, this is the story of that impossible mystery, and the one person who was brave enough to figure it all out. So yeah, that was the question that was just haunting the village of Haridaspur. It sounds like something from a nightmare or some dark folk tale. But for the people living there, this was their reality, and it was happening over and over again. How on earth could this be happening? You know, if you were to just drive through Haridaspur, a small village in Madhya Pradesh, you'd think it was completely normal. Dirt roads, quiet, rural life, all of it. But just under that peaceful surface, you could just feel the fear. It had taken over everything, especially in houses with young daughters. This place wasn't just a village anymore. It had become a prison of secrets and silence. So here's how it would go down. A young woman, totally healthy, would suddenly start getting these awful stomach pains. Her family would rush her to a doctor, and then they'd get the shocking news. She was pregnant. And for these families, it was just devastating. There was no secret boyfriend, no visitor in the night, no explanation at all. It just happened. And listen, this wasn't some isolated incident. It wasn't a one-time thing. It started with 1 or 2 cases, and then it just spiraled into this full-blown crisis. 16 girls. That's 16 different families just thrown into chaos and shame and confusion. The whole village was living under this shadow of dread, just asking themselves, what is happening to our daughters? So as you can imagine, people were getting desperate. The girls were basically put under house arrest. At night, the houses were locked down like fortresses. We're talking doors bolted from the inside, windows sealed tight, entire families, parents, kids, everyone sleeping in the same room just to keep an eye on each other. But here's the most terrifying part. None of it worked. The invisible threat just kept coming. While the whole village was paralyzed by fear, the real breaking point came from one man, a simple farmer named Sham Sinha. His 16-year-old daughter, Gudia, was the latest victim. Same story, sudden pain, a trip to the doctor, and then that impossible news. Sham was completely shattered. His daughter swore up and down she was innocent, and he believed her. So at his wit's end, he decided to do something no one else had dared to do. He went to the city to find the top cop. So he goes and stands before the Superintendent of Police, Renuka Chaudhary. And you have to understand, this is an officer known for being fierce, strict, and totally incorruptible. And Sham just lays out the whole unbelievable story. He's begging for help, his voice trembling. Now, at first, Renuka was probably thinking, what is this guy talking about? It sounded like pure nonsense. But when she saw the raw desperation in this father's eyes, she knew this was real. So Renuka immediately sent a team out, led by Station House Officer Vikram Singh. They get to Haridaspur, and they find exactly what we've been talking about, a village just frozen in fear. They search every single house, check every lock, question everybody. And the result? Nothing. Absolutely zero signs of a break-in, no clues left behind. Officer Singh's report back to Renuka was just baffling. He said it was like a ghost was doing it. Okay, so Renuka's looking at a crime that leaves no trace. She realizes that regular police work, that's not going to cut it here. If the evidence wasn't going to come to her, well, she was going to have to go to the evidence. And that's when she made a really bold decision. She was going to investigate the case herself, but not as a cop. She was going undercover. I mean, just look at this transformation. On one hand, you have this powerful SP, strict, honest, fierce. And on the other, a beggar. Disheveled hair, a tired face, an old bag. She had to shed every single ounce of her authority and become someone so unassuming, so invisible, that she could just blend right into the village she was trying to save. So as the sun goes down, her plan kicks into gear. She walks into Haridaspur and goes straight to Sham Sinha's house, the very man who had begged for her help. Of course, he has no idea who she really is. He just sees this poor, weary traveler. And out of pity, he offers her a place to sleep for the night. And just like that, the trap was set. She was inside. So that night, Renuka is lying on a small cot near the door, pretending to be fast asleep. But you can bet her mind was wide awake. Every single sense was on high alert. The house was dead silent. The family was in a deep sleep right beside her. She knew if anything was going to happen in this village, it was going to happen in the dark. The vigil had begun. And then midnight hits. She quietly gets up, slips out the door, and just melts into the shadows of the village. The streets are completely deserted, just this eerie silence everywhere. She moved like a ghost, her eyes scanning every dark alley, every locked door, waiting. Her eyes were drawn to some old, crumbling ruins on the edge of the village. And then she saw them. 2 figures stumbling out of the darkness. They were carrying a bottle and had these sinister smiles on their faces. Who were these guys, and what were they up to at this time of night? Renuka followed them, staying in the shadows. She watched in absolute horror as the 2 men crept up to a nearby house. One of them scaled the wall, dropped into the courtyard, and unlocked the main gate for his partner. They vanished inside. Renuka waited, her revolver in her hand. 30 minutes later, they came back out, and that's when she stepped out of the darkness, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "Stop! One more step and I'll shoot. The men, who were probably feeling pretty smug a second ago, were just stunned. And then, bam, a deafening gunshot rings out as Renuka fires a warning shot into the air. That sound jolted the entire village awake. People, including Sham Sinha, came rushing out of their homes to find this beggar holding 2 men at gunpoint. As the villagers grabbed the criminals, she calmly removed her disguise and said, "I am not a beggar. I am SP Renuka Chaudhary." The entire crowd just stood there in absolute shock. So, now we're back at the police station. The interrogation starts, and these 2 guys, stripped of all their arrogance, they broke pretty quickly under Renuka's questioning. And the truth they revealed, well, it was more horrifying and more calculated than anyone could have possibly imagined. This was their sick routine. During the day, they would pose as laborers or salesmen to scope out houses with young women. Then, at night, they'd scale the outer walls to get into the courtyard. But here it is. This is the key to the whole mystery. They carried a chemical spray. They'd spray it through the windows, causing everyone inside to fall into this unnaturally deep sleep. And then they would assault their victim, helpless, right there, while her entire family slept just a few feet away, completely unaware. The case was immediately sent to a fast-track court. There was no messing around. Faced with their own confessions and just overwhelming evidence, the 2 men were found guilty. The judge, calling their crimes an act against humanity itself, gave them the harshest sentence possible, life in prison. Justice, swift and severe, had finally come to Haridaspur. A while later, SP Renuka Chaudhary went back to the village, not as a beggar, but as a hero. And the words she left them with, wow, they really get to the heart of this whole story. She said that no matter how deep the darkness gets, a single, small light can end it. We just need the courage to be the ones to light it. And it kind of makes you wonder, right? In the face of that kind of darkness, where do we find the courage to be that light?